he's in that circle with the vice president. So I think that he's going to fit in. You've got it right there. The culture is very important. He is right in the middle of the Democratic culture in the way that Bernie Sanders isn't.
Well, yeah, and relating to Sanders, what I think, the one thing that has attracted, there's two things that I think the Sanders wing of the party, which if you can call it that, and it's sizable, right? I mean, the guy got 45% of the vote. Two things I think have attracted their attention and frustration criticism. One of them is Kaine voted for Trade Promotion Authority, which is different than. There you go. Breaking news. NBC News can now announce that Tim Kaine will be the vice presidential nominee for the Democratic Party. That is now confirmed by NBC News. We can announce to you right now at this moment the Virginia senator, one-time governor, one-time mayor of Richmond, Tim Kaine will be the vice presidential nominee for Hillary Clinton. So it is official now, Chris.
Well, it's a big deal, and I think that this ticket is going to work. I think that it's because of what happened last week that Hillary Clinton felt very comfortable in picking the person she wanted to pick. And I think that's because she believes that the Senate is now wide open for her to win a substantial victory, a big victory in the fall, because Trump is not really doing that well, even as of this last night at midnight. It really hasn't gone into the center politically. She can grab it back from him. She can win big. She can maybe win 55% or more in the popular vote. And this guy's going to help her do it. She knows she doesn't need to go to the hard left. She's not perilous in her choice. She got to pick the guy she's comfortable with.
All right, Chris Matthews, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on. And congratulations for winning the Derby.
Joining me now, MSNBC's Joy Reid, the host of AM Joy, and Ruth Conniff, editor-in-chief of the Progressive magazine. Ruth, let me get your reaction first. You were a Sanders supporter. I think you think of you as someone who's in that sort of Sanders wing of the party, particularly on stuff like Wall Street and trade. And there was a lot of skepticism towards Kaine. What's your reaction?
Well, first I have to say I'm not officially a Sanders supporter. I'm not a Sanders surrogate. I'm not affiliated with the campaign, and I'm a magazine editor. So, but right, my politics are progressive politics, and the Progressive magazine's readership were big enthusiasts for Sanders. And I think my reaction is almost the exact opposite of Chris Matthews. You know, the fact that Kaine is an establishment guy that you see him at a lot of fundraisers is not going to excite people who voted for Bernie Sanders. And it's just a sign that Hillary does not feel like she has to do anything for the progressive wing of the party. And that's unfortunate. It means, you know, you got Tim Kaine, who just in the last week wrote a couple of letters reassuring the financial industry that, you know, he joined with other senators in saying that they should get a break on regulation, that regional banks should get a break, that larger banks should get a break, not unrelated to the fact that Capital One is in his district.
Right.
You know, here's a guy who is, in a year that trade is such a big issue, and we heard so much about it last week in Cleveland, you know, this is a guy who's for the TPP, and he is for fast track authority for trade deals. So this is not a move of any kind towards the left. And you know, it's true that in Washington that probably feels comfortable, and it feels comfortable to Hillary, who's a cautious politician. But there are all these voters out there, and you got to energize them. This is not an energizing pick.
Ruth and Joy, I want you to stand by for a second because joining me now on the phone is the governor of Virginia.
That's enough out of you. You're much too honest to talk about Hillary Clinton on our news network. Get me some establishment whores out here now to tell us the truth about Hillary and her VP pick.
But there are all these voters out there, and you got to energize them. This is not an energizing pick.
Ruth and Joy, I want you to stand by for a second because joining me now on the phone is the governor of Virginia, Terry McAuliffe. Governor, your reaction to the man who once held your office and your current home state senator, Tim Kaine, being chosen?
Well, Chris, I got to tell you, we are so fired up here in Virginia. Tim is a great pick. He embodies, you know, the values. He has been a moral progressive his whole life. You look at his whole history. He was a great mayor here, great lieutenant governor, great governor, and he's been a great United States senator. And he'll fight for folks. I mean, that's what this man has done his whole life. It is really a great pick for Hillary. He can reach out to so many different communities. He's got a 100% rating, as you know, from Planned Parenthood and NARAL. He has been a huge supporter of LGBT rights. He has been a great partner in Washington for me as governor to work to try and get the dangerous guns out of the hands of individuals. So, you know, I couldn't be more excited here in Virginia. It also helps us make sure that Virginia, which is probably one of the top 3 swing states, is going to be a blue state. It's going to be a Clinton-Kaine state this November.
Governor, I want to ask you about him substantively, but first, let me ask you this. You now are in a key position if Kaine were to join the ticket, which we believe he will, and if that ticket were to win, right? Because that city is vacated. Walk us briefly through what would happen next and what kind of power you would have.
Well, I would appoint his successor, and obviously I'm going to appoint someone who's going to continue on what we've tried to do to build the economy here in Virginia, to fight, protect. I mean, I just had to, as you know, veto a bill to defund Planned Parenthood. I just vetoed a so-called religious freedom like North Carolina. We have been out front to fight to get the guns out of the hands of dangerous folks. I will appoint someone who will continue on in that tradition to help Virginia continue to grow. I just announced today a 3.7% unemployment rate, the lowest of any state in the Southeast. We're open and welcoming to everyone, and we're going to continue on in that progressive tradition.
All right, Governor McCall, if you're still there, we lost you for a second. All right, I think we lost. I think we lost Governor McAuliffe there. Joining us now, Chuck Todd, moderator of Meet the Press, political director for NBC News. And Chuck, to the extent you know it, can you take us through the thinking in Clinton world on this pick?
Well, this is the combination of call it. There is certainly some campaign angle to it. Sure, he's from Virginia, but this is a governing pick and it's a comfort pick. I mean, you know, it's interesting here. And the more remarkable thing about this pick is it was probably the most speculated on pick and the most presumed idea as her running mate before she ever announced, right? The idea of Tim Kaine as the most likely finalist of the one or two was sitting there when this campaign started. And usually when whoever is being floated at the beginning never lasts when it comes.
Right.
I think that says a lot that he got through this process. But, you know, in demeanor, they're very similar. And that's my understanding where a comfort level was found, right? Which is they're very there is a similar, remember, he was born and raised in the Midwest. She was born and raised in the Midwest. They have that same demeanor, and that's the comfort level that she got. Yeah,
you and he had a very funny exchange about sort of his quote boringness a little while back. If Controller, if you could cue that up, I think we have that. But I also want to bring in Andrea Mitchell. I think has some new reporting on the sort of background behind this this decision that happened. Andrea, what do you got?
Let me give you a bit of a tic-tac that we just got from a Clinton aide. First of all, they met a week ago Thursday, just after we all covered Tim Kaine and Hillary Clinton at Annandale in Northern Virginia at a rally, which went very well. John Podesta and others who were key players in all of this were at that rally to watch their chemistry. They met for 90 minutes that night at her home at Whitehaven, right off Massachusetts Avenue in D.C. Then on Saturday, the Clinton and Kaine families came together at the home in D.C. So it was Tim Kaine and his wife, also Mark and Chelsea, and Bill Clinton came, and they had lunch and talked about a lot of things. So this is the only candidate whom she met with, whom she had met with twice. This process, I'm told, started all the way back in April when John Podesta, her campaign chair, brought binders to Chappaqua, binders of almost 30 different possible candidates, all put together and carried in a Dwayne Reed grocery bag. How's that for a little detail from the campaign aides? And she started culling through them. She's decided finally that what she really wanted was a partner, someone she wanted to see every day for the next 4 or they hope 8 years if they are elected and then reelected, someone who could be a partner in governing. They're going to push back very hard against criticism from some people in the progressive movement that he's not progressive. They point to his fighting for gun safety, his remarks after Virginia Tech when he was the governor, also what he did when he first got out of Harvard Law School and worked for anti-poverty law and in the civil rights movement. And going all the way back, they could also speak about what he did in Honduras, where he ran a Spanish language school as a Christian ministry, so a missionary rather. So they have a lot of talking points to push back against criticism from some in the progressive part of the Democratic Party that he is not progressive enough. And as you know, they're appearing here in Miami and Florida, further south from where we are now in Tampa, with Hillary Clinton for the first time as a campaign ticket tomorrow, sometime midday on Saturday.
All right, Andrea. Andrea, thank you for that. Chuck, to Andrea's point there, and to something that Ruth Conniff, the progressive, set up at the top, substantively, to me, the most interesting aspect here is trade. It has become such a lightning rod in this campaign.
Sure has.
It is something in which I think, against any of the predictions of any political observer, the last three candidates in the race, Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton, and Donald Trump, are all opposed to TPP. You've now got Tim Kaine on the ticket, who did vote for Trade Promotion Authority. There does look like there's a little daylight now in terms of the positions there, and also in terms of Trump wanting to hammer on this as a key theme.
Look, I think he is going to hammer on it. And the fact is, I don't think Hillary Clinton was ever clean on it. Right? Her opposition is always been hard to accept, because of how many different ways she praised it and sold it as Secretary of State.
Right.
And, you know, she came up, well, I didn't know. It doesn't matter. So I don't think it was ever a good issue for her anyway. I think what the Kaine pick will do, if you're Trump, is you say, aha, see? Right. She really is. She's not that committed to being against TP. You can't trust her because she picked a pro-TPP senator. But I can tell you, it's hard to, there was not many people on that short list that wasn't in favor of TPP,
right,
other really than Elizabeth Warren.
Right.
You know, most of the folks that were on the list, because most of the Democratic Party, of the rising stars, Barack Obama worked really hard to get them to support this, including Tom Perez, right, who was one of the progressive folks. So, and one of the things you ought to know is most of the time, you know, it wasn't that long ago, especially in Virginia, and this is where I think progressives are going to nitpick at Kaine a little bit. It wasn't that long ago where the conventional wisdom in Virginia politics was, if you were a Democrat in Virginia, you really had to run to the middle on guns. You know, I remember the first time Tim Kaine ran for governor, they bragged about being pro-life. He has amended that to say he's personally pro-life, but has always been in favor of keeping all the laws that are on the books and access to abortion and things like that. But the very recent centrist nature of Virginia is something, you know, on whether it's on the gun issue, whether it's on abortion, or even on, and trade is another one, being it's a very pro-business state. I think that's where the left could start picking at Kaine a little bit. But I'll tell you, it would be nitpicks at this point, and I think that's what the Clinton campaign is gambling on.
Yeah, and I think also there's a question too strategically about, I mean, some of the, you know, Sherrod Brown's another name who was mentioned, who was against TPP, but he was in a state with a Republican governor. Elizabeth, there's a real question about whether some of the people that I think were viewed as progressive champions, is particularly true of Elizabeth Warren and Sherrod Brown, would be silenced essentially as vice presidential picks, or should Democrats take the majority? I mean, Elizabeth Warren, if Democrats take the majority, Sherrod Brown as chair of the banking committee, they're going to have pretty powerful roles in shaping legislation. It's unclear whether it would be a net benefit for the Sanders wing of the party to take people like that and essentially put them in the Naval Observatory and have them be sort of under the control of the administration.
No, I think it's a fair point. I think you bring up what progressives ought to be thinking about, which is Elizabeth Warren and Sherrod Brown. If there is a Democratic Senate, they might have a lot of power. Bernie Sanders, too, as committee chairs in another Senate, and they can put pressure on a Democratic White House on an issue like trade in a way that if they were sitting at the Naval Observatory, you're right. And it's funny, there's one big issue that I think is going to be an interesting test for Kaine and the Clinton relationship. Tim Kaine, probably more than any other Democrat, and he works with a couple of Republicans on this issue, has been desperately trying to get a new war authorization written. And he has been a believer that there's too much executive power when it comes to these decisions, that the legislative branch has essentially abdicated its ability here. Does he, as vice president, somebody sitting in that National Security Council meeting, is he going to then tell Madam President, you need to take that to Congress?
That's a great question. And he has been quite outspoken on the AUMF. But yeah, when people move from the Article 1 section of our government to the Article 2 section, sometimes they have a change of views. Chuck Todd, thank you very much for coming by. All right, lots of big news happening today. We got sort of the first day of the general election, right? We got a nominee on the Republican side. We now know all 4 people that will be on the ballot for the 2 major parties. Tim Kaine just announced by Hillary Clinton's campaign as a vice presidential nominee. We're going to have much more coverage of everything going on today in just a little bit, so don't go anywhere.